let's get to the real issue because the series is over. Is Porzingis?
Yeah.
I don't like. It looked like Harrow stepped on his foot and he tweaked his leg. It looked like he probably ruptured his Achilles. He looked upset coming off the floor. It sounds like it's not that bad. What are you hearing?
I've heard that. I mean, first of all, it's just going to be like the imaging today that they're gonna figure it out. But same that you're hearing is that avoided a major thing. The thing about an Achilles injury, you can tell right away if it's a major injury or not. Like you might not be able to tell the severity of a lesser injury. But if it's the difference between a calf strain and an Achilles thing, it can be minor, and they're still trying to like kind of figure out what exactly happened. But if it was the ruptured Achilles, I mean, you'd have like uh, I won't even get to the specifics, but you'd have very obvious things that they'd be like, "Yep."
Well, we
That's
heard
what
about it with Aaron
happens.
Rodgers. Like as soon as Aaron Rodgers went down, you can feel it. Like it's like the thing.
You can feel
You
it. You
can
can even see it.
right. Like you could if you look at the replay of the Rodgers injury, you can see his
Yeah.
Achilles give out.
Yeah, you can see it kind of roll up like a window blind
yeah.
under his
That's
sock.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's the effect exactly.
You
So the good news is that it's not that, right? So now we're talking about a matter of weeks, not months or a season. So if it really is just the calf strain and it's grade 2 or something like that, we're looking at potentially 3 to 6 weeks. And the Celtics have been careful with Porzingis, and if it's the most extreme of a calf thing, then he could be out as long as the beginning of the NBA Finals.
talk about how that changes them offensively and defensively. Obviously, Miami's not going to be much of a challenge in this round, but Cleveland's a much bigger team. Orlando has bigger guys. How does that change what the Celtics do?
Yeah, it does make it a little bit tougher for them to pull a rim protector away. It puts a little bit more emphasis on what Al Horford can do. The good thing is that Horford has remained pretty healthy all season long, and so he's able to do some of those things on offense. And unlike maybe last season, the year before, you put so much where they put so much on Horford over the course of the season that maybe come playoff time he didn't have as much left in the tank. I think they're able to because Porzingis was around and because Luke Cornett had a pretty good season and other guys could step in. I think Horford has a lot more to give at this point, but it certainly does put an added emphasis on getting this series done on Wednesday night and not doing a typical Celtics thing, which would be to extend the series. Looking so good on the road, go home and lose at home and having to come back to Miami. You need to end this thing so Horford can get his rest and you can get all the guys on the same page. But it does take away that floor stretcher and another rim protector where you could have somebody on the floor for 48 minutes that you trust. Now you might have to rely a little bit more on Xavier Tillman. You might have to rely, a little bit more on Luke Cornett. And while they've done the job in the regular season, it does make it a little bit more difficult when the postseason rolls around.
John, I'm glad you brought that up because I said it earlier. Don't look past your ability to close this thing out and be done with it tomorrow night because you would have to flip the script in terms of how things have gone for the Celtics at the Garden this postseason, last postseason, against this team specifically. But let's say they do that. You mentioned a couple of players who could step up if Porzingis is going to miss significant time. It's stretching the floor, absolutely. Is there one guy you would focus in on, though, that you could say, all right, on any given night, he would be the most consistent because even though, Porzingis, of course, had nights where he was better than others, consistently you could count on him to make some big shots and to take those threes that were borderline indefensible. Among the names that you mentioned, who would be the best fit to kind of fill that role from a consistency basis?
Yeah, that's a tough question. And I think the answer is you kind of throw the test balloons out there and whoever has it on that night, that's the guy you go with, which is a little unfair to the guy who you throw in. But if Tillman steps in, if you go with him and you go a little bit stronger, a little smaller, but, stronger, if he can get the job done early and it's working, then you roll with him for as long as it's working. And if they adjust, then you go a different direction. But it's just going to kind of be who has it going that night. And maybe maybe it's neither of those guys. Maybe you just go with Al Horford and you go small and you run with Jason Tatum as your center for stretches, and you say, hey, Jason, you're going to have to play a little bit of a different role, and lean on the fact that you've got Drew Holiday and Derek White as your ball handlers and initiators on the wing, and you run those those two with Jalen on the perimeter, and you've got Jason and maybe Sam Hauser gets extra time. And what the thing, if you're playing Cleveland, you're not playing big bruising guys. Evan Mobley, Jared Allen are thinner, and Jason's like their size, so he can defend those guys. They're not big offensive threats. Allen's not a big offensive threat, so you're just going to stay in front of him and keep him from catching alley-oops and stuff. So that's also an option that Tatum can pick up some of the slack in some small ball lineups at the 5.
What's your take on what happened in the second half last night with Adebayo, Derek White, and Jason Tatum?
Well, I mean, Adebayo, I think it's a silly kind of gamesmanship that, look, it's the same mindset that Joe Mazzulla had when he was contesting a shot, right? Like you can't let the guy get a shot up after the whistle because you don't want him to feel good about himself seeing the ball go through. It's funny in some ways, but it's a little bit of a silly kind of bravado that can result in something like that. It's a little bit of an aberration. You don't see it very often, but I'm in Al Horford's camp when he said, sometimes you just got to let the guy be and not put a player at risk. We're all trying to do a job here. So stepping underneath somebody's foot and, getting into a landing space on a shot after the whistle is dumb. And the Celtics got lucky that it wasn't a more serious injury.
Do you think that the Celtics should have done more when the Heat went after Tatum in Game 1? Do you think that they should have been more physical maybe in Game 2 or retaliated in some fashion?
Look, I'm old enough where the guy who grew up watching 80s basketball wants to say, yeah, you put a guy on his ass the next time around and you send a message, but it's also 2024. And as much as we might say we wanted to see that, the league, the rules, you cannot put yourself at risk for something stupid like a flagrant foul, flagrant 2, plus an ejection, a suspension. The league isn't set up for that anymore. So yeah, I understand wanting to send a message, and I don't know that message would have changed anything. They could have done it. They could have gone old school. They could have gone Robert Parrish on Bill Laimbeer, 3 karate chops and live with the results. And that still wouldn't have changed what happened last night. So it's just the league is different.
Did you, this is off topic, but did you guys, which is rare for me, did you guys see that Pierce and Garnett talking about the 76ers Knicks series? And they're like, the league just wants the 76ers Celtics. They're like,
I missed that. And I don't normally, I think because I've been traveling, I don't normally get my car ride to get the KG.
It was just, I'm not listening to the podcast. Believe me. It just came up on my Instagram.
It is
feed.
Absolute off the hinges. It's incredible.
No, I know. It's I think that, you know what? I think Pierce might be high on occasion. I'm going to go so far as to say, I'm taking that.
Are you suggesting that Pierce imbibes in the, oh my God.
I'm suggesting that.
Oh, Lord.
But it is funny.
Vapors.
But I had to listen to it twice to figure out what they were saying. But they were saying that the series is rigged because they were talking about Instagram models and they got into it and how they're not as good looking in person.
Okay.
That when you meet them, you go like, "Who are you?" And they're like, "I'm that Instagram model." And they're like, "No, you're not." And then it went into how the refs wanted that
Wow.
to happen because the refs aren't.
That's a thought process that marijuana would involve.
Yes, indeed. Because my point, what got me thinking that was, you talk about flagrants, and I don't doubt that something would have been called in this series, but it seems like in that Knicks 76ers series, they're letting an awful lot go. So
that Embiid foul where he grabbed Mitchell Robinson was ridiculous.
Mitchell Robinson,
I think that should have been.
Yeah, Embiid is down. Mitchell Robinson had jumped up and was in the air.
Oh yeah. That's been replayed a million times.
Was bad.
Well, in the last game, Embiid did a forearm shiver to Brunson's face when he was coming through the lane. Like, they're letting a lot of stuff go. It's kind of cool. I mean, they did give the Knicks a game, so you have that. All right, John Corrales, safe travels. Thank you so much for joining us from Miami, and beat the traffic.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. For more Celtics analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.